Do you like casting massive threats? Do you like insane value? Then I have a treat for you. It's Zhulodok, Void Gorger. Let's go. Zhulodok is a legendary creature Eldrazi for 6 mana and is a 7/4. And colorless spells you cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater have Cascade. So what's the goal of this deck? It's to cast big spells and profit. We do have some limitations because this is a colorless deck, but let me show you how to overcome them. Making big mana. To make that big mana, we've got mana rocks like Basalt Monolith that taps for 3. Dreamstone Hedron also taps for 3. It can get us cards. And Everflowing Chalice can get as big as we want to tap for as much as we want. To keep the ramp train going, we've got Hedron Archive. It can tap for 2 and can be sacked for cards. Liquid Metal Torque's a 2 mana rock, and so is Mindstone, but Mindstone can net us a card. To keep it going, we're including Sisay's Ring. It taps for 2. Soul Ring, it always taps for 2. And Stone Speaker Crystal, it also taps for 2 and can exile graveyards and draw cards. Thought Vessel's just another 2 mana rock. Thrion Dynamo always taps for 3. And Worn Power Stone's an overcosted Soul Ring because it taps for 2. Now this section consists of what I call unique ramp. Joyrose Familiar is going to reduce the cost of our legendaries and our artifacts. Manifold Key, as well as Voltaic Key, can combo off with the mana rocks that tap for multiple mana to generate a larger mana advantage. Now that we've got our big mana out of the way to cast our humongous spells, how are we going to get cards into our hand? Let's get into some advantage. Eye of Vecna is going to let us pay life to get some cards. Mind's Eye will let us draw a card every time our opponent does, and Mystic Forge will let us play spells off the top of our library. Sensei's Divining Top can be tapped to let us draw a card, but it will let us rearrange the top of our library to set up our cascades. Staff of Domination has a few abilities, but we can tap it and draw a card. Staff of Nim lets us draw an extra card at the beginning of our upkeep, and we can ping things. Thran Spider will let us look through the top 4 cards of our library and pull an artifact out. Trading Post has a few abilities, but we can sacrifice an artifact to draw cards. Zenith Chronicler will make everybody at the table love you because when a player casts a multicolored spell, all the other players get to draw a card. Now that we got our colorless card advantage out of the way, let's get into some interaction. All Is Dust makes all players sacrifice all colored permanents they control. Karn Liberated tears apart hands, gets rid of permanents, and then lets you steal all those cards. Meteor Golem's a 7 mana spell, so it triggers our commander, and when it ETBs, we destroy target non-land permanent. Neb's Disc is a classic board wipe. It can destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Portal to Phyrexia triggers our commander, and when it ETBs, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures, and it lets us reanimate beaters from graveyards. Scour from Existence is a pinpoint removal spell that lets us exile any permanent. Spine of Isha is an artifact that destroys any permanent on ETB. Steel Hellkite's a one-sided board wipe for one of our opponents for specific converted mana cost. Now it's time for our tale of 2 Eugenes. First, we got Ugin the Ineffable. It's going to reduce our colorless spells and functions as pinpoint removal. Ugin the Spirit Dragon is pinpoint removal, a board wipe, and has a crazy ultimate. Now it's time for the part that everybody's been waiting for, the big spells we're going to cast to trigger our commander. First up, there's Artisan of Kozilek. It's a 10/9 with Annihilator 2, and it is Reanimate on ETB. We get a creature back from our bin to the battlefield. Bane of Balaget is a 7/5 Eldrazi. When it attacks, the defending player exiles 2 permanents they control. Blightsteel Colossus has a place in this deck. It's a trample, indestructible, infect beater that's an 11/11 and is unstoppable. It can be stopped, but you know what I mean. Breaker of Armies is a 10/8 Eldrazi, and when it attacks, all creatures able to block it have to. That means all of our other threats are getting through. Cityscape Leveler is a massive 8/8 construct with trample, and when it ETBs or attacks, you get to destroy a target permanent. As a bonus, it does have Unearth. Conduit of Ruin does 2 things. First, it can reduce our creature spells, and second, it lets us tutor a massive 7 mana or greater threat out of our deck. Deceiver Reforms a 7 mana 8/8 Eldrazi, and at the beginning of combat on our turn, we get to reveal the top card of our library, and all other creatures become a copy of that card if it's a creature. Hopefully we reveal a Kozilek. Desolation Twin can put 20 power on the board for 10 mana. When you cast it, you get another 10/10 with it. Eldrazi Conscription may not be a creature, but it's going to turn any of our creatures into a threat. Gives +10/+10 and Annihilator 2. Of course, we're including the only Commander legal Emrakul in the deck, Emrakul the Promised End. This baddie has flying, trample, and protection from instants, and you get to control another player during their next turn. Next up, there's Endbringer. We get to untap Endbringer during every player's untap step. You can tap it to deal 1 damage to a target creature or player. You can pay 1 and tap it, target creature can attack or block, and you can pay 2 and tap it to draw a card. Forsaken Monument makes our entire board a little more threatening. It's going to pump all of our creatures by +2/+2, it's going to double our mana production, and it's going to let us gain life. It That Betrays is an Eldrazi, a big one. It's an 11/11 with Annihilator 2. We do get some added bonus on this card. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, we get that card on our side of the battlefield. Kozilek Butcher of Truth is going to net us 4 cards when we cast it. It has Annihilator 4, and it can't go away because when it dies, we shuffle it back into our library. Kozilek the Great Distortion is a little more exciting than the Butcher of Truth. It nets us cards and allows us to counter spells. Liberator Urza's Battlethopter may look underwhelming, but it has a ton of upside. It lets us cast our spells at instant speed, and it grows every time we cast one of our big threats to turn itself into a threat. Pathrazer of Ulamog is a huge Eldrazi with 2 abilities, Super Menace and Annihilator 3. Phyrexian Triniform's a 9/9 for 9. But if it gets removed, we're going to get some golems in its place. On top of that, it does have Encore, so it can come back to keep the fight going. Platinum Angel does one thing, but it does it well. You can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. Even though Platinum Empyrean is an 8/8 for 8, that's not why we play it. We play it because our life total can't change with this in play. Spawnsire of Ulamog is a big threat. It's a 7/11, it has Annihilator 1, it also lets us create those little Eldrazi spawn tokens that we can sacrifice for mana. Triplicate Titan's a 9/9 for 9 with Flying, Vigilance, and Trample. Luckily, when it dies, we're going to get some value by getting some more 3/3 golems with keywords. Ulamog's Crusher is an 8/8 for 8. It has Annihilator 2, and it must attack each combated fable. To us, that's not a downside because we want to be on the offensive. We are also running Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. This Eldrazi Titan, when it comes into play, exiles 2 permanents. It also has Indestructible. Furthermore, whenever it attacks, the defending player exiles the top 20 cards of their library. People will hate you with this card. We can't forget the original Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. When it comes into play, we get to destroy a target permanent, it has Indestructible, and Annihilator 4. Void Winnower is a major problem for our opponents. First, your opponents can't cast spells with converted mana costs that are even. Secondly, your opponents can't block with creatures that have an even converted mana cost. Walking Ballista may be a whiff if we cascade into it, but it's too threatening not to play. It's a mana sink that can eliminate our opponents through direct damage. Now that we have the threats out of the way, there are 3 specific lands I command that you must run in this deck. Let me show you. First, there's Eldrazi Temple. It taps for a colorless, or it can tap for 2 to cast an Eldrazi spell. Then there's Eye of Ugin. It doesn't tap for mana, but it reduces Eldrazi spells by 2. Furthermore, you can use it as a tutor to get an Eldrazi out of your deck. Finally, there's Sanctum of Ugin. It's going to tap for a colorless, but it can also let you tutor Eldrazi right out of your deck. The great thing about this kind of build, you can run any utility land that your heart desires. And that about wraps it up. Be sure to check out the full deck list, link in the description. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye-bye.